Welcome. In our last video, we looked at the difference between a markup and a margin when setting a selling price. Let's put that knowledge to the test now in the context of a tricky performance management question. We've got the question on the screen, and the first thing we do to see what we are up against is we read the requirement. And what would be the effect on the revenue and the total contribution? So we know that we should be using marginal costing when we see the word contribution of the change in the pricing policy. So the first thing that I will do is lay out a template or a pro forma. So we need a line for revenue. We'll call that R. And then we will subtract variable costs from revenue to get contribution. So that's my template: revenue, variable cost, and contribution. Let's read the story now. A manufacturing company prices its products to give a markup. There's that very important word, not margin, but markup. The markup is on the variable cost. So let's stop what we're doing and set that up. So we start with a 100 at the variable cost, and marking up of 100% would be doubling it. So now, in relative terms, the contribution is also a 100 there. Contribution and variable cost are equal. Let's continue reading. If the selling price is increased by 50%, so a 50% increase in the price would affect the revenue line, and the quantity sold drops by 40%, well, that would affect total variable cost and total revenue, because remember, variable cost, as the name suggests, is variable depending on activity level. Now they tell us that the actual cost per unit does not change. Only the activity level will change. So we can now simulate that. Using these relative numbers, if the selling price increased by 50%, we would multiply by 1.5. And if the units dropped by 40%, well, that would be multiplied by 0.6. 100% minus 40% is 60%. So that would be multiplied by 0.6. That gives me something. Now, the variable cost per unit is not going to change. However, the total variable cost will drop by the same amount as the revenue. So we can multiply that by 0.6. That would be 180. So look at that. The revenue dropped. We can eliminate two of them. The variable cost will now go to a 60. And my new contribution will be 120. So have a look at that. Contribution actually increased. So the correct answer, everybody, is B. That's how we can use our knowledge of markup and margin to successfully solve a performance management exam question. Now, just to recap from our last video, imagine they had said it was a margin of 20%, not a markup of 100%, but a margin of 20%. So we would start over. And I would put the 100 at the revenue line, the 20 here, at contribution, if it's a contribution margin, and then the variable cost would be the balancing figure, 80. And we would then multiply the revenue line and the variable cost line by those same percentages and perform the same test on revenue and total contribution. Ladies and gentlemen, that's how we use markup and profit margins in ACCA performance management.